And here we go, cool. So we're gonna post this to our website, our project page. And if you know of anybody who wants to see what's going on and miss this meeting, please refer them to our project page. We'll show that link at the end. So yeah, thanks for making our meeting. I realize this is the holiday season. There are lots of other things that are pulling our attention in different directions. So we're psyched to present you guys with some designs and some ideas. So if we go to the next slide. Here's some Zoom tips. Everybody's pretty familiar with Zoom by now, but just in case, we're saying you want to, turn your video on or off, turn your microphone on or off. There's the buttons in the lower left corner. We're going to ask for you to hold your questions until the end of the presentation. During the presentation, if you have certain questions, you can put them in the chat and we'll respond to some of them as we go, if it's just sort of on a rolling basis. Otherwise, some may be appropriate to bring up during the conversation that we're going to have at the end of the presentation. So if we can go to the next slide. Here's our agenda for tonight. First, we're going to present the project team and the project goals, our schedule. Then we're going to talk about what we have heard at meeting number 1, which included our first Ryan meeting, as well as the Sullivan Square open space, all the information that we've been receiving, both from our surveys and just sort of anecdotally as well, people emailing us, conversations that we've had. Then we're going to go over the various programming considerations, which at Ryan is no small feat. There are a lot of different people who love the park and share the park. And so we're going to try and make a balance of those needs with our designs. And then we're going to talk about the concept proposals. So that's actually the design work, the drawing, the consideration that we're listening for you guys to give us feedback on tonight. Listening and discussion will come then after that, and then closing remarks and next steps. Next slide. So project team and goals. Next slide. I'm here tonight with Weston Sampson, very talented landscape architects. We've got Brandon Kunkel, Gracie Villa, and Farah Dakak. All of these guys at Weston Sampson, they've had great experience working on other projects in Charlestown and throughout the city. So we're very lucky to have them here working on this project. Usually our outreach coordinator is still Christine Brandeo, and that has her contact information. However, we are here with Shauna, and I'm forgetting her last name, but Shauna is here from Parks tonight, and she will be releasing the mute buttons when you guys raise your hand. If you have questions, she will call on you and allow you to speak. So, and then I'm B. Chatfield, project manager, and that's my contact information. If you have any questions or comments, that's how to get a hold of me. Next slide, please. So here we are with our project schedule. We first came to you about Ryan Playground specifically in September. Then we had our Sullivan Square shared open space meeting hosted with BPDA, where we talked about Hood Green, Ryan Playground, and Rutherford Avenue and how those 3 spaces work together. That was in October. And so now here we are here in December. So here we are with community meeting number 2. We're going to come back to you with our schematic plan that we're thinking is like the final thing that we're going forward with. We're going to check in with you guys at community meeting number 3, and we're looking at sometime in late February, early March for that. So keep your eye on our project page for that date. We're going to start permitting shortly after that. Permitting is a significant process for a waterfront site, as I'm sure you know. And then we're hoping that construction can start on the beginning section of the park in fall of 2022. So next slide. So here, this is the slide that we showed you in our first presentation. So we're just trying to truncate things a little bit. We have a whole lot of different priorities and sources of input that we try and incorporate when we design a park. We've got the City of Boston priorities. These are increasing walkable access to parks, addressing equity, climate resilience, improving community health, and community building. We have safety and regulatory guidelines that we incorporate as well, community input, which is why we're here tonight, and then our parks and recreation goals, which are very similar to the cities. We try and create and update our parks so that they are accessible and available to all. We want to encourage a diverse, balanced, and efficient mix of uses. We try to conduct meaningful outreach and engage with the community. And we are doing our part to try and address climate change as well by creating resilient spaces, landscapes. We're also trying to promote connections both between the community and their local park and within the community. So people encountering each other within their parks. So we include all those components, and then we ask the designers to make a fantastic park design out of it all. So if we could go to the next slide. I'm going to pass this off to Brandon Kunkel from Weston Sampson.
Thanks, Bea, and thanks everyone for having us back again for the second community meeting. As Bea mentioned, we're very excited to hear what you folks have to say tonight, and just really, I guess, to lay the groundwork for the balance of the meeting. Know that these concepts that we'll be presenting tonight are intended to really generate conversation. We are under no impression that these are final designs by any stretch of the imagination. These are merely to generate ideas and gain feedback from you folks, make sure we're on the right track as we move forward. So with that, just a little bit of refresher, a little bit of context. In the next couple slides should look familiar. We presented them in both the Sullivan Square meeting as well as the first community meeting. But just this is the existing site as it is today. And you'll notice too, just for reference purposes, the proposed Sullivan Square outline in white overlaid on the aerial. So you'll see the Sullivan Square improvements, but really it's to delineate and identify the proposed extension that is still not a guaranteed, but seems to be headed in that direction for the expansion of Ryan Playground. Next slide. This is also should look like a familiar slide, but just a refresher for everyone. So we have done a site analysis. So you'll see if we were to start at the Mystic Riverside or the right side of the slide, we are dealing with Coastal Bank, a waterfront area, a designated waterfront area, a 100-foot buffer, existing trees, land subject to coastal flowage, or land that's been designated as land that is within the flood zone, as well as utility easements. I'm sure many of you are aware that Eversource has a major easement that runs through the park. That's the shaded purple area on the north side, or the street side, Alfred Street side of the park. And there's also Boston Water and Sewer also has 2 easements within the park. And we'll talk a bit more of that as we move through the concepts, but just wanted folks to be aware. There is the existing storage and concession stand building, the existing hockey rink, youth baseball field, a little league fields, and softball fields that are currently out there today, as well as the playground and the small parking lot, or it's about 25 spaces that are out there today. And you know, it's a great site, great views towards the bridge, as well as across the river itself. And to our, on the lower side of the page, we have the Shraff City Center project. And I know, and I'm sure many of you folks participated in the Flatley meeting for their project a couple weeks ago. We had a few folks that not only participated in it, but also listened in on the meeting as well. So next slide. So what we heard at meeting number 1, this is really, we want to make sure that, like I said, we're on track. This is all based on the feedback that we've heard so far through the various ways of communicating, whether or not they've been emails to Bea or through the survey, through meeting notes based on the last community meeting, etc. This is just a way to make sure that we're hearing you correctly. This is based on the feedback that we heard so far. And if we're not hearing it correctly, we would like for you folks to chime in and make sure we are. So this is just a summary of the questions that were asked in the survey results. How often do you visit? So there's quite a bit of visit happening throughout the week. Most people are visiting at least once a week, 58%. 35% are visiting multiple times a week, which is great that the park is getting used so much. Most people are walking to the park, about 60% by foot, 26% by car, 10% by bike. And then what do you typically do at the park? 60% are walking, which coincidentally falls right in line with how you get to the park. About 52% are using the playground. And then waterfront, baseball, exercise, the street hockey, other field sports, and then other passive picnic and other passive activities. The question was asked, when addressing the rising water elevations and flooding, how would you like us to address it? 40% want a method that increases the area for picnicking, seating, and passive viewing. And we hope that we will be able to relay in a way tonight that we are on the right track to be able to provide that. 23% want a method that looks similar to what is there now, a boardwalk on top of a seawall, perhaps. And then 31% want a method that provides an opportunity to physically interact with the water, such as steps or platform. So we hope that at least the concepts that we propose are addressing most of the feedback so far. And, you know, like I said, the intent is to generate conversation and ideas and to make sure that we're headed in the right direction as we come towards a preferred plan. Next step, or next slide. So the top 10 most desired park amenities. Number 1 was sports fields. And then 2 was water access, followed by the playground, lighting and safety, walking paths, more tables and seating, shaded area, sport courts, noise buffering, tree planting, and then accessibility within the park itself. What changes to the park would encourage you to use it more? 72% would be improved sports facilities, 59% improved access to the waterfront. And it continues on down. I don't want to read everyone. I'm hoping everyone is able to read the text. If you can't, please raise your hand and we can go through it. But and then increased parking at 22%. Just using sort of some wordles and, you know, what do you love about Ryan Playground? It's the space, it's the waterfront, it's the location, baseball, so many great assets at the park. And then how would you describe your level of comfort and safety at Ryan Playground? About 43% said it was good, 12% said it was excellent, 43% said it was fair. So we'll call it fair to good overall. Next slide. We just took some clips from some of the feedback that we had. These folks shall remain anonymous, but we did not in any way doctor these quotes, but these were just comments within the survey. The current playground is underused because it is outdated and on the periphery of the park, making it difficult for parents to see their kids. The waterfront, open space, the playground proximity to my home and mature trees are all things that this person loves about Ryan Playground. Connectivity to the park is critical to its future use and success. The field space is very limited in Charlestown, and having dedicated baseball-only fields doesn't make sense. The improvement should put a turf field that can be used by multiple sports. The dog park. There are many dogs in Charlestown, but None are fenced, in which gives the dogs an extra measure of protection and keeps the public undisturbed. So those were just some of the comments. We sort of collected them into groups and then came up with the summary of most of the comments. Hopefully we captured that. Next slide. Programming considerations. So we've taken the feedback. We've now have started to digest it and applying it to the site analysis and the project goals. So some of the programming considerations that we use when looking at a park like this are the following. Next slide. The hours of use. And so we pulled the permitting from 2019. We have, I think we can all collectively agree, 2020 was a bust for many activities. So we're using 2019 as our data, as the last full year of really unrestricted athletics and use and permitting. So total current use by category is youth athletics overwhelmingly, followed by adult athletics and then special events. Now, some of this stuff is, when we say special events, it's just called out on the permit. It doesn't specifically say what it is, but it just, it doesn't have a designation. So, but it's a relatively small percentage of the permits itself.
And sorry, I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second. Someone asked in the chat, and so it's pertinent now, which is why I'm jumping in, is if BPS uses these sites, Boston Public Schools. And I think in the permitting, there's no BPS usage of Ryan Playground. Like, coincidentally, some of their kids may be parts of leagues, but the schools don't officially use this site. So, sorry.
So total current use by field type. So this is based on the fields that are available there now. Softball field 2, which is the one located close to Route 99, is used for 1,724 hours. The baseball field is used for 1,249 hours. And then so on and so forth. Hockey rink is, I don't know that that's actually, it is permitted for a solid 27 hours. Now this does not take into account, only because there's really no way to track it, because it's not permitted, but the unpermitted use of these types of fields and courts. So if you were to break all the permits down by type, what the data has spit out is the Little League Baseball is using the fields for over 2,000 hours. The youth baseball is used at 2,000 hours. High school is somewhere between 0 and 500. I forget the actual number, but it's a relatively moderate number of hours. And then youth soccer is just, I think, about 27 hours. I think if I recall correctly. The current use by adult athletics, the adult baseball is over 200 hours. Adult softball is about 200 hours, and then adult soccer is about 20 to 30 hours, I believe. So that's if you were to boil down all the permits and all the hours. So when we're considering fields and layouts and trying to maximize the efficiency of the fields, those are all the things that we're taking into consideration. Not everything, but it's just a way to measure the sustainability of some of the materials as we move forward. Next slide. Other things we consider when looking at a site is maximizing the efficiency and orientation of some of the fields that might be proposed. So for example, the maximum optimal orientation of a baseball field is just north-northeast. Technically, I think it's about 15.275 degrees east of north. But this sort of, as we move forward through the concepts, just something to take into consideration as we present them and as folks provide their feedback. Just that there is poor orientation and that's really related to the sun and how it affects the players. And then, you know, good orientation, that's the safest for whether or not the sun is in the batter's eye or the pitcher's eye. Next step, or next slide. For courts and rectangular fields, the orientation is north-south. And you can see in the graphic here, Ryan, in the relationship of the diagram to the left to the orientation of Ryan Playground itself. So like I said, as we move through the concepts, you'll see some of the orientation of the fields and the possible courts that may or may not be added. Next slide. So as we look at the use hours that we presented a few slides ago and the permitted hours in considering materials and durability and how to maximize the use of some of the fields, you know, we consider synthetic turf versus natural turf. And these are the pros and cons of both. So synthetic turf definitely has a higher initial cost to build, to repair, to replace. It does allow for more playing time and definitely can support a higher intensity of use. And it can extend the playing hours on a single day as well as a season. It's less intense maintenance program. It has been proven to prevent fewer injuries due to more even playing surface and a consistent Gmax performance. And for folks that may not be aware, Gmax is the measuring system they use for head impact on field surfaces. So it's known to prevent less concussions occur. Environmental impacts, it does potentially lend to more heat. And we are well aware that urban heat island within the city is very important, and the city's working to combat it and moving into the future. So that does present a possible challenge for us. The production and the use and degradation of the materials themselves and the disposal at the end of the life of the turf, and the padding and infill materials as well. So just we're well aware of the environmental impacts that come with synthetic turf fields. Natural turf fields, they do have a lower cost for installation and construction as well as repair, but they do limit the playing time. You do want to be able to rest your field so they can recover after use. A good functioning field is usually recommended to be limited somewhere between 300 and 600 hours per year. It does involve a more intensive maintenance program. Like I said, the recovery time between uses to allow the field to recover, the mowing, it does require a lot more work. It does have an increased chance of injury due to natural inconsistencies in playing surface. That usually happens as the field ages and gets older. So you'll get settlement just due to the New England weather, freezing and thawing. And so it does lend itself to have different types of injuries, such as ankle sprains or other types of injuries. And then obviously, as the field does age, it does become more compacted, leading to more concussions over time. And then the environmental impacts is really just high water use when irrigated. We're very cognizant of that with climate change, water is in much more demand as we move forward. And so we try to be as efficient and as smart about using water when it makes sense. Next slide. I'm going to hand this back over to B. She's going to set the stage, and then I'll be back in just a moment.
Cool. Thanks, Brandon. All right, if we go to the next slide, this is the beginning of our design concepts. First, I just want to set the stage so that people understand. We have our existing site that everybody knows and loves with the red outline here. And we're considering this phase 1. And so when we say the park, this would be included in phase 1 versus phase 2. There is a wedge of land that you can see over there on the left that says proposed extension phase 2. And this piece of land is something that we anticipate receiving as a result of the realignment of Rutherford Avenue. And that is a project that we've been coordinating with. And the anticipated schedule for that is somewhere around 5 years from now, perhaps, right? And so they're going to start their project at the southern end of Rutherford Avenue by City Square, and they will move north. That is the plan. So our project would receive this additional portion of land towards the end of their project. So when we prioritize, what we want to put in phase 1 versus phase 2, this is just understanding that whatever we show in phase 2 is going to arrive a little bit later or significantly later, depending on how you consider time. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I'm not going to start explaining these plans, right? This is the design team, but I just want to set the stage by talking a little bit about Boston Parks. We've been working with the Climate Ready Boston team and others throughout our city to understand where the parks are in our system that we should really be focusing on for our resiliency efforts. And the project at Ryan is happening not only because our playground hasn't been comprehensively renovated in quite some time, but because our waterfront is a point of vulnerability for Charlestown. So what we're going to show you in these next few schemes are different approaches to the water's edge, allowing for different kinds of interaction that you guys might want to have. We have to change the water's edge. We know that, right? And so how should this happen? Do you want a deck at the water's edge? Would you prefer something softer with a focus on plantings? Is a pathway a good way to experience the view, or would you like something broader, like a gathering area? We're going to balance the responses that we hear tonight with our budget considerations going forward, but we hope that these schemes will just show you the range of options for the whole site, but also the waterfront specifically. So with that, I pass it back to Brandon.
Thanks, B. So this is the first concept here, concept A. And just a few things to keep in mind as we go through the various concepts. There's a couple of key numbers to remember. The first one is elevation 22. That is the critical elevation that we are using for the projected sea level rise through 2070 within the city. So currently, the next number to remember is elevation 16 plus or minus. And that's about the elevation of the fields that they are at today. So we're talking about a 6-foot grade change between the existing fields today versus that water's edge that we're looking to protect. So just some points of reference there. So I think the easiest thing may be to perhaps start at the water's edge, and then we'll work our way towards the intersection of Sullivan Square. Unfortunately, I don't have a red pointer that you can all see, so I'm going to try my best to start on, we have a mouse. Hopefully you folks can see that. So starting at the water's edge. So understanding that for multiple reasons, a lot of it is permitting, some of it is cost, a lot of it is just maximizing what is there today. Our plan at this very moment is not to touch the seawall that is there today. We've done structural analysis on it. It's in relatively good shape. It does need some strategic repairs, but that is a whole lot more cost effective than actually touching the wall itself. And as well as if we were to actually touch the wall to do anything with it, it does open up a whole nother level of permitting in timelines that are really not advantageous to getting this project underway. So the expectation is to work with the existing seawall at the water's edge and then berm up to elevation 22. Now, we understand that that's quite dramatic. Like I said, it's about a 6-foot grade change, but we do want to provide some deck that would be at elevation 16 or at top of the seawall now. And then we would have a ADA accessible walk and a set of terrace seating that would allow to maximize the views towards the Tobin Bridge. And that would bring you up to elevation 22. This would also tie in to the Flatley project elevation and make a stronger connection to their future project from their parking lot in particular, providing another entrance into the park. There is one now. It is not accessible, but you are able to access their parking lot. And I believe many of you folks actually park at that parking lot for most of the sports activities and use of the park itself. So we would look to provide some nice lower deck viewing at that corner. And if we were to sort of move along the water's edge towards Alfred Street, you would have a meandering walkway pathway at the top of the berm. And then that would bring you to a larger deck up at elevation 30. And what that really allows us to do is not only provide a different height for elevation and viewing, but it does allow for sort of nestling in the baseball field, creating a bit more of a stadium feel at that corner. We would definitely be building in some stadium seating or terrace seating within that deck. The deck also, and you'll see momentarily in a section, could be a great opportunity to provide storage below the deck. I know storage is always been a challenge at many of the parks, just for many of the youth leagues. So this might be an opportunity to maximize the ability to have a use on top as well as storage below the deck itself. And the embankment would be planted with native coastal grasses that would provide habitat and a much softer edge along the water. So as we move down into the fields area, we would, you'll see we're providing 4 fields similar to what is there today. And that includes a youth baseball field, a little league field, a softball field, as well as what we're calling the premier little league field. It's only premier in that the field that's out there now is fenced in. It's got a press box, dugouts. It tends to be, it looks like, in my opinion, the one that is used for the big game day events. So we would look to definitely replicate that in this new layout. It is at the optimal orientation, as I noted earlier. And we are also bringing in a playground area closer to the fields. We heard that, you know, the playground currently is isolated. This brings it closer into the fields. There's a possibility of perhaps having a splash pad area if that's desired, closer to the baseball fields. One thing also to note is that you can see it faintly drawn in. This does provide a layout for a high school field. It's a high school soccer field at 300 by 180. And it's even more faint, but we did look at it. There is an overlay of, shoot, what size fields are those, Gracie?
U10.
U10, I'm sorry. U10 fields, and obviously you can break it down into fields, smaller fields, U6, U8, depending on however the various leagues would want to do that. You know, this is clearly a multi-use setup in this layout here, but understanding that just this park is, we're trying to maximize the use of this field area as much as possible. So we would be in this particular scheme potentially keeping the existing building, support building where it is today, as well as the hockey rink in the exact same location as it is today. Obviously, what you do notice is that we are reducing the parking area. We wanted to maximize the potential for just passive lawn, for picnics, for unprogrammed play or use, and then add additional trees and buffer along the street edge and a more formal entrance into the park from the intersection through an entry plaza. You will note that at the Premier Little League, closer to the Schraff City Center, there would be a new press box with potentially storage below it, new bleachers, dugouts. So like I said, we would be looking to replicate the very similar situation to what you guys are used to and have today. So just a bit of reference, there are existing, and you'll see this on all three schemes, 71 trees on site today. Unfortunately, just through the grade change on this scheme, there are 26 trees that would remain, but plus or minus, we would, you know, hopefully be able to add in 65 new trees. The reason for the tree removal on this scheme in particular is just because you'll note that the large multi-use field area is at elevation 21. And that's really to bring users up close to that elevation of 22, that critical elevation, so that there isn't this big embankment separating you from the water. We wanted to try and keep the views to the water as much as possible unobstructed. And so therefore we're raising the field quite substantially to be able to do that. The hockey rink, as I mentioned, just because the city did put an investment into that about 5 years ago, we wanted to maximize that to the park's advantage as well as to the city. So that would remain in place on this particular option. And as I mentioned, the existing support building, concession, restroom, all remains in place. Next slide, or next concept. So before we move on to the next concept, as I mentioned, these are some sections that are really conceptual, but just to give an idea, particularly section A, which was up at that overlook deck with the possibility of storage below. You can see that we could provide grandstand seating for the baseball field to help with the change, but there would be an opportunity to provide storage below that deck, which could be quite nice. And then the next section is closer to the Flatley side, where we're interacting with the existing wall at elevation 16, and then providing the seats, steps, stairs, terracing up to the baseball field elevation at 20, 21, 22. Next slide. So this is concept B, and there are a lot of similarities, and I think you'll see a lot of similarities between the plans, and really that is just because the programming that is being asked of the park today, and we believe moving into the future, we're trying to put a lot into a relatively small park space itself. So once again, we'll start at the water and work towards Sullivan Square. So once again, we're looking to maximize the ability to interact with the water at the existing elevation of 16 on top of the seawall. We would have a little bit smaller deck in this scheme, perhaps if I had to separate it from the previous one. This one is putting a little bit more of the use on the interior of the park versus at the water's edge. But it does provide other opportunities, which we'll discuss as we move through the site. Once again, elevation 22 is the critical elevation we're looking to achieve for sea level rise and climate resilience. Oh, and so we would transition up from elevation 16 up to elevation 22. And really what we're doing here is ultimately creating a berm that allows the fields to stay more or less at their existing elevations, or at least the multi-use three baseball, softball fields plus the rectangular area. The premier Little League field in the upper right corner is at elevation 22. So it would be at a higher elevation. It's in the same orientation as it is today. Very similar to what you guys are used to and have been using. So there shouldn't be much change there other than increasing the elevation. The way we would bridge that would be through ramps, sloped walkways, and a set of stairs that could be nice and used for viewing the multi-use field activities. There would be built-in seating below trees that would provide shade, and another opportunity for a deck. No storage below it, but another opportunity for a deck on that side as well. And we'll show some sections through that area momentarily. And then once again, another multi-use field area, just for reference, a high school soccer field, but that could obviously be striped in a way that could be used for younger age groups. You'll see here softball, once again, softball, youth baseball, and another Little League field for this multi-use area. As we move through the site, you'll see the playground is similar to the location that it was previously, a little bit smaller, but better proximity to the fields. This one actually does remove the support building and provides an opportunity for a basketball court. We would replace the support building with possibly a new building with storage behind that corner of the field. And then there would be an opportunity for a splash pad. The plaza is a little bit more organic, a little bit more, we were referring to it as an urban forest. The idea is that the paths sort of meander through, providing terrace lawns, seat walls below the trees, a little bit more passive space coming off of Sullivan Square. This one is showing the possibility of a dog run or a dog area that could be fenced in closer to the traffic area, and then further away from the fields. This one also provides the ability for 28 trees to remain based on proposed grading and elevations, particularly along the Shraft City Center side. You can see them sort of screened out and grayed out. Those are intended to represent the existing trees to remain. So in summary, the hockey rink remains in place as it is today, just given the investment that the city has made into that recently. It does provide a new support building, and it does have a little bit harder edge up against the water, as you'll see in the sections momentarily. Next slide. So this is that little harder edge that I was indicating. So we would essentially be building a seawall on the backside of the existing seawall, setting it back. And the reason for setting it back is because it allows to not allow for additional pressures and forces on the existing seawall. So we wouldn't be compromising it. And then we would cantilever, a boardwalk, or just have different elevational changes based on wherever you are within the waterfront area. And then we would berm up to provide some separation between the fields and the water's edge, and then possibly provide some built-in seating for viewing for the fields themselves. Next slide. Concept C, perhaps if I had to sum it up, puts the greatest emphasis on maximizing the athletic fields. You'll note here that this allows for the use of 4 fields, 4 baseball, softball fields simultaneously. Just there is no overlap of the fields. You will also note it does have the ability to have a full-size high school soccer field or a full-size field at 360 by 225. So this is even slightly larger than the previous schemes. Just noting that that may change depending on the material. Obviously, if it's natural grass with mounds, those would impact the ability of the use of the soccer field, depending on the size. So we are aware of that, but we did want to point for reference that you are able to get a larger field. So once again, lastly, starting at the water's edge, this is perhaps the softest of the edges along the water, with mostly organic undulating path along the water within a native coastal grass setting, a little bit softer edge, smaller paths, a little bit more natural feeling, with just moments to stop and pause and take a look at the water. Noting that the future connection to the Flatley project, they're anticipating having a boardwalk connection of sorts. So we would want to address that and honor that so that they're able to continue on if you were to take that boardwalk route. So here we are actually going up from elevation 16 existing, and then actually traversing up to elevation 24. That does provide a little bit extra topography change, a little bit more interest, as well as a little bit more separation and more buffer for future sea rise. And then we would raise the fields up to elevation 21. So it would be about a 3-foot grade change, and we can handle that through walls, seat walls, stairs, sloped walks around as you go from essentially elevation 21 all the way up to elevation 24. So it's a little bit of a grade change. It's not quite the unobstructed view as the first concept, as I noted, but it's not as much as the second concept where the fields remained at elevation 16 and the berm was at elevation 22. So this concept perhaps has the most water edge, if I had to sum it up, just based on the green shading, provides for a softer edge, more natural edge, more habitat for birds and other critters, pollinators, all good things that we are trying to encourage within an urban environment. As I noted, this allows for the greatest maximizing of the fields, as well as repositioning the Premier Little League field to the right orientation, relocating it to the opposite side, pointing in the opposite direction. We would be keeping the existing support building, putting on some sort of screen storage area on the street side, on the back, to consolidate some of the storage that's out there now. And then providing additional storage, bleachers in a press box at the backside of the Little League field at its new location. The playground would stay in more or less in its current location, but just with the alignment of the fields, it's a lot closer now. The hockey rink would actually be relocated slightly to allow for more of an internal plaza slash support area for the fields related to the existing building, the press box area, sort of a gathering space internal to the park itself. And then we are eliminating the parking, but providing a drop-off area. We totally understand that the use of these fields require people to show up with their own equipment, bats, gloves, baseballs, whatever. We totally get it. So we would anticipate that if you're dropping your kid off or child off for a practice, you could easily have them come in, get out of the car, and then you could either go and park or come back and pick them up at a later time. And then just looking to the future, you know, the possibility of pickleball courts, if that's something of interest within the community, and then providing some small cutout areas for perhaps their outdoor game tables, such as ping pong or other chess, cafe tables, just small sitting areas in lieu of just open grass, given the limitations of, you know, what we're dealing with space. So couple of sections that we can show. Next slide. So here you'll notice, particularly on section A, it's a lot more subtle as you cut from the baseball field on the left towards the water. We would once again be cantilevering out over to maximize the use of the park itself, a much larger soft native grass area in between the fields and the water's edge. And then section B is just showing how, you know, the pathway could be undulating, so you could be back down closer to the water at elevation 16, and then having a seat wall, and maybe there's some native grass plantings behind you to provide a buffer between you and the baseball fields beyond. And then really the section C is showing how you can meander the paths. You could have multiple ways of moving through the water's edge area. So next slide. So in summary, I'm sure we can definitely come back to the slide when we go to the questions and answers. Concept A, so defining the quality, expansive views unobstructed to the Mystic River, because we're raising the majority of the park up to elevation 21. Amenities include a multi-purpose field, a larger playground, open lawns, sweeping views, and adult fitness. I totally missed that. I apologize. I meant to point it out. We identified the possibility of an adult fitness area on all the concepts. And we can talk about that in a bit. Type of waterfront experience is a combination of hard and soft edge and views from multiple elevations. As I noted, there are 71 trees existing. Existing trees to remain would be 26, but we would be adding, you know, up to, you know, 65. And please note, these numbers are very, very preliminary. As we go to a final design, that number is most definitely subject to change. And then the hockey rink would remain in place, as well as the existing support building. Concept B, the defining quality, elevated waterfront only. The amenities would include a multi-purpose field, larger playground, smaller intimate spaces for gathering, adult fitness, basketball court, and a dog run. Type of waterfront experience would be a hard edge with a cantilever deck, stairs for passive viewing. Existing trees to remain would be 28. In this one, because as I noted, we kept referring to this as the urban forest. We felt we could get up to 126 trees to really increase the shade canopy. The hockey rink remains in place, and then a new support building. Concept C is perhaps the softest edge with the largest area up against the water, increased recreation area for the fields. The amenities, a multi-purpose field, 4 fields that can be used simultaneously, splash pad area, pickleball court, adult fitness, and then possibility of some outdoor game tables. Type of waterfront experience, soft edge, urban wild type experience, and we have some photos to help explain what we mean. And then existing trees to remain, it's a little bit depressing at 5, but we would look to add 71 to have a total net increase over time. And then the hockey rink is relocated. The existing building remains with additional storage area provided. Next slide. So what do we mean by soft edges? Here are some examples of soft edges against the waterfront. You know, it could be very nature feeling. It could be a little bit, you know, surrounded by taller vegetation to help provide a buffer, noise reducing, visual separation from the more active baseball fields, provides great views while providing habitat. It could be a lot softer edges where the planting bleeds in to the walkway areas and they're not so defined. The shapes could be more organic versus rigid angles. You'll see there's an opportunity for decking and viewing areas, and then as well as built-in seating on, you know, looking back either towards the water or towards the baseball field. So there's different ways to increase the grade elevations without it feeling too forced and engineered. Hard edges, you know, it could be a boardwalk decking with a railing, built-in seating walls. It could be terrace seating, as you can see in the second image down from the right, or it could be something a lot more hard edged where a lot more stairs, a lot more opportunity to have more of an urban feel, more of a engineered constructed edge along the water. Next slide. So we understand everybody knows what a baseball field looks like and a soccer field looks like, but just for context purposes, you know, here are some examples of how multi-use fields typically lay out in particular, so that you're allowed to maximize the fields throughout the year. Now, these are synthetic. That is not intended to be a gesture one way or the other. You can do it easily with natural grass, but from a readability with particularly the striping and the field layout, it was easier to show it as synthetic, but you can easily do it with natural turf as well. And then just some of the courts could be a very nicely done basketball court, pickleball court, or maybe it's a half court basketball with a pickleball court. There's plenty of options. This is just showing the various scale. And then the fitness, it doesn't have to be this particular type of fitness, but it's a great way to get people to do outdoor exercise. Particularly if you're jogging through Charlestown or along the water's edge, you can stop, do a good workout, and then continue on your way. Just a dog run. They don't have to be grass. They don't have to be, you know, really an eyesore, as long as they're kept up and maintained. But they could be subtle, where the fence sort of blends in and isn't so noticeable. And then these are just some examples of some outdoor design. They're intended to be outdoor, but ping pong tables. There's other types of games that are available for fun and gathering. Next slide.
And if, I want to keep a quick eye on the time because it's about 7 o'clock and I want to give everybody a chance to have a conversation. So these are fantastic images, and I know we have a few other pages, so flick right through them, but I just wanted to keep a quick reminder of that.
We'll wrap it up real quick. Thank you, B, for the time check. Next slide. Just real quick, as we head into the comment and conversations, here are some examples of playground types. They could be traditional, more post and platform, nature inspired, or something a little bit more wonky and out of this world with, whether or not they're these little Martian houses in the middle or these bird cages on top, or they could even be as simple as rubber mounds that kids play on. Next slide. And then here's some examples of splash pads. Once again, more traditional with pavement and, more permanent type feeling, or you can do a more nature inspired theme with rocks and logs. They don't have to be so pavement heavy. And then just, we wanted to be aware that, as part of playground and experience of growing up, we're aware that, sensory play is all very important. So there's different types of sensory play that could be included within the playground area. Next slide. And that is it. So I'll hand it back to you, Dee.
Thank you so much. That was a lot of information, and thanks everybody for looking at all of that and coming up with some questions. There was a lot of interesting conversation going on in the chat as well, people wondering about parking. So the thing that we are hoping happens tonight is not that we get some vote on like, I like plan A and plan B and plan C. We really want people to talk about the different aspects of each plan that they like or that they don't like. If you see something that's just like, no, that's a non-starter, let us know. So Dan, you've already got your hand raised. I open the floor to conversation. And I think this is great. Yeah, if we have these concepts up in front of us, that's a good idea.
I like all three. I can't choose.
We'll do it. Great.
The only thing I was interested in is the reserve space you have by the bridge. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what the thought pattern is at this point?
Yeah, so we've had some conversations. We are aware of the desire to connect our park to, northern and southern routes, and we have a bike path that goes along Alford Street right now, and it's unclear if the eventual goal is going to be an at-grade crossing that is somehow protected, or if it would be something like a bridge structure going over Alford Street to connect to the bike path that goes along the MBTA property to the north. But the idea, because this is still a question mark, the idea is that we would leave an area in that corner of the site where we would be able to either land a ramp or provide some sort of pull off for bikes to wait to cross the street if that's the case. But so there would be that would be something that would probably be going in, I would guess, in phase 2, potentially, like once Alford Street and Rutherford Avenue project has been completed, that would have a greater understanding of what those possibilities are.
Yeah, that's going to be important for, especially with the new Mystic Bridge. So I look forward to seeing some final thoughts on that. The one thing I'd like to see is maybe the platform area in concept A be patched on concept C, if that's possible, so that you have that storage facility underneath. It seems to be similar in size and shape as being a potential possibility.
That's a great point. And I think that a lot of these elements in these plans can be very mix and match. It's sort of like, even though we're not showing basketball in concept A, that could probably be incorporated somewhere, if we wanted to do pickleball somewhere else. I think deck size, so thank you for that point.
And the last one is the play area. What is the, I'm sorry, I guess I may have missed it. The square footage for the 3 spaces, are they about equal? Is one bigger or smaller than the other?
I would say on average, there are varying sizes. They're all really close. They're about 7,000 square feet, which is pretty close to what is there today. believe it or not. A little bit bigger. It could be smaller, but that's just sort of a comfortable size if you had to aggregate and average out the three schemes, 7,000 square feet.
And maybe some sort of low fencing to sort of contain the kids?
Yeah, we typically like to fence in the playgrounds for multiple reasons, particularly to prevent kids from making a beeline outside their parents' arms. So
exactly.
Totally get it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I think Tim raised his hand next.
Hello. Again, I think they all look really great. Thank you so much for these thoughtful designs. I just wanted to weigh in a little bit on the turf versus natural. Obviously, I think most of the sports teams would lean towards maximizing use and playability, and so we'd lean towards synthetic. That being said, I think the way that you've broken out the premier Little League field, lends itself to that field potentially being natural, certainly natural infield. And even in concept C, I think that large, the youth baseball field could have a natural infield, potentially, even if it's synthetic in the outfield. So I think there's a potential for a combination of both surfaces. But and the only other comment is with the lining, there might be an opportunity also to line the large soccer field for lacrosse as well. I know it's a lot of lines, but that would give it lacrosse functionality as well.
Great point, Tim.
And lines are easy. We can always afford lines.
Yep. It's a little confusing, but that's a trade-off we're willing to make.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much, Tim. How about Joanne?
Thank you.
Hi, I appreciate all the work you've done. I am a little concerned about eliminating all the parking. I know you did a survey, but the people who responded to the survey may not be the main users of the playing fields, especially when you had 60% people who were walking there, and they walk there and they also walk through there. So I would say that you need to go at least hopefully reach out to the folks that were here in the first meeting that were the coaches and the organizers of all the different leagues, that the kids leagues that are using the fields, to what they need. I know Schrafft's does have parking. I think we should probably assess how many spaces are there. I know that is something that part of their permit with the DEP back, I don't know how many years ago. So they do have to provide that as a public amenity and access. So I know it is secure. I think we should just make sure people understand that it's not a favor. It is something that they are required to do, but I don't know how many spaces that involves. So we should assess all of that. And also, as I say, make sure you've talked to the people who bring kids there to play those games. What are their parking needs, rather than just eliminating it all. The dog run, I think that's something that we have to see. I've been pushing in a few others to make sure that Plan Charlestown looks at all of the open space and looks at recreational needs, so that we're not necessarily having dog parks or playgrounds everywhere, just where they make sense, so that we're strategic about it. So I know this is going to be probably the first plan done. So of all of the other open spaces that are yet to be built, but I think that if we don't put some of these things here, hopefully they'll be able to be put other places. I like the pickleball, I like the basketball, I like that it varies up, changes up some of the uses and the ages here. I think you're at a great start. I think it probably is a little bit of mix and match. I like the idea of the using that viewing deck, the tall one for storage underneath. I think there's a lot of great concepts here. It's just how to put it all together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Yeah, regarding the parking, it's definitely something where, we're showing no parking in concept B and different configurations in concept A and concept C. So, we sort of threw that out there to see what the reaction is, but we have been working with the Little League organization, and they park in the Schrafts area. They said that usually it's out of town teams that end up parking in the parking area. Regardless of that, the parking that we have right now is massive compared to how it's used. So if we do continue to keep parking on this site, it would be significantly smaller. So it's good to hear feedback about that, especially regarding the dog run. The Parks Department prefers to do dog runs when in partnership with a community organization. We're definitely aware that there are a lot of dogs that get walked at Ryan. And so, we think that there's an interest there, but we would be really interested in doing it if there is a community group that said, we love this and we really want to support this and we will help maintain it. So we're drawing it and we're showing it there to sort of gauge the response. But if no one comes forward to help, it would be sort of a tough thing for us to really throw our weight behind. So we're putting it out there as an option and sort of looking to see what the response is. I think Caitlin Moore had her hand raised for a while.
Hi. Oops, sorry. Hi. I just want to echo, thank you so much for all the work here. And I have a dog that's barking behind me, so forgive me. Just a few quick questions. And this may be a separate conversation, but is blue bikes or the addition of bike racks, and would that be an add-on to any of these? Or is that something that needs to be planned for at this stage?
So blue bikes is not done through the Parks Department.
Okay.
And if there wanted to, if a blue bike location was proposed for this, then we would talk to, I want to say it's the Transit Department who is behind that. And we would certainly be providing bike parking because we definitely we support it all. But I think that we would hesitate to put a blue bike location in an area where we would want to put some other form of recreation. And so, it's sort of just a question of where it would go. I think the thing with Ryan Playground is it's a large park, and so we could probably find a place for it. So that's a good consideration. So.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that very quickly. Another, if nobody's put forward, I think the nature elements look really pretty. I think there are a number of modern playgrounds in Charlestown, and I think it would be a nice addition, but I just want to put that out there as an idea. And then there's a lot of goose poop at Ryan Playground. Is that just because the nature of an open field, or is that something that any of these concepts have considered?
Sure. I can speak to that a little bit just through experience of having done a lot of athletic fields. And I am by no means a goose expert. However, I've been told by people who have had to mitigate geese that they're feeding on the grass clippings of natural grass fields. It's close to their body of water. It's a good food source, and so they're more apt to, feed and do their business within natural grass areas. There are ways to mitigate geese, whether or not it's through programs such as, could be dogs that chase the geese off the fields. The geese police. There's other more environmentally friendly ways to mitigate the geese. Like I said, I'm no geese expert by any stretch of the imagination, but my understanding is they are using the grass clippings as a food source, so that's why they tend to gather in large open fields such as athletic fields.
Last quick question and then a comment. Is there room in any of these with the adult fitness area to have a small or a track of any kind that could be built in either around the edge of the whole park or even a section?
So I guess I would offer up that there is circulation circumferencing the park. And I would say that while it's not a
It
formal
serves that.
track, it's
Yeah.
not a formal track, you can definitely walk around the entire park.
That's what I was trying to see if they all connected, all the
They
different.
do, yes.
Okay, great. And then I'm a big fan of pickleball. I think it's a great idea. So hooray for pickleball.
It's the most popular and upcoming sport in the United States right now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. How about Alice Brown?
Thanks, Bea, and thanks, Brandon. I'm here tonight with my Boston Harbor Now hat on. Despite being a former resident of Charlestown, I wanted to raise a couple issues thinking about resilience and waterfront stuff in general. I think all three concepts, A, B, and C, are really thoughtful about what the waterfront could be. In concept C, you showed a lot of grassiness, and Boston Harbor Now is definitely really supportive of nature-based climate resilience solutions or adaptation solutions, but it sort of wasn't clear if the grass was serving that purpose or just sort of a look and feel sort of factor.
So I'm not sure that we've gotten to quite that level of detail yet. Both options are completely possible. Once we head towards a preferred concept, we'll get more into the engineered aspect of it. I think over time, the vegetation would become more of that engineered, stabilized effort as the water rises. More of it becomes inundated. But perhaps more at the beginning, it's more of habitat area for, animals and other types of nature-based, growth.
Yeah. I think one thing that jumps out at me is, a couple things jump out at me. When we have spaces where there's quite a bit of depth of nature-based areas and you can have a whole bunch of different winding paths through them, that's one feel. But when you squeeze all the nature into a teeny tiny channel and then the rest of the park is something different, it doesn't necessarily have all the same benefits. I'm not here for the super science experts on this, but just thinking about what that tiny row is versus a bigger part of the park. So I think it was Dan who suggested that perhaps there could be a sort of concept A and C connection. I think one thing that jumps out to me is that we've seen a couple waterfront developers elsewhere in the city who've said we want to have really skinny paths, but the general harbor walk requirement is to have a 12-foot wide path. So if that's the case, and we're not really fitting it in the grassy ecosystem, but we can fit it in with the boardwalk option and then just add grass water side of that might be the right sort of fusion of the two. And then also thinking, obviously, the data shows that most people come to walk in the park, but if we did that by time, I would guess that the sports players and their parents or caregivers are spending the most time in the park. They're there for the whole game. And so the idea that they might not be able to see the water, whereas that plan A really gives a lot of folks visual access to the water, has a lot of merit to me in that sense.
Great points, Alice. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. I just want to do a quick shout out to looking at the chat. Jonathan Law is here tonight, and he's from Weston Sampson, and he is the landscape architect that is working on the Schrafts project. So he is responding knowledgeably to a lot of the questions that you guys are asking. So I just wanted to say thank you, Jonathan. That's very helpful. I don't know the details of the Chapter 91 requirements that they have, but you obviously know these things deeply. So thank you. Now let's go back to Dan. You got your hand raised again. What's going on?
Yeah, as far as the harbor walkway, that element in this space should be that 8-foot requirement, ideally. It doesn't have to be straight. It can be curved, because I like the A concept of the curve and C. So it doesn't have to be straight, but getting, especially there as well as along Alfred Street would be the other area that should have a wider path, because if you're going to have bicyclists and pedestrians all fighting for those spaces, on those two tangents. And one of the things I'm still harboring about is the name harbor. in this whole argument, because this is not harbor, this is river. And technically this should be the river walk going from Berry Field on up. We actually have a circle on Berry Field, magically placed there with the intent of delineating what is river and what is harbor, because that was the only open space that we could do it. This is when we did rebuild Berry Fields many, many, many centuries ago. I was there. I pushed it. I made it happen. So the concept of Harbor Park is the overriding schema, and the lower schema spaces are the two, and they should be delineated as two, especially for people who get confused, you know, saying, wait a minute, I'm going up the river or am I going up the harbor? And you're not going up the harbor, you're going up the river. Hopefully not into the jail. So we got to get that done. You know, relabel this whole area as River Park and the other areas below Harbor Park. And that would make it a lot easier for people to find their way around. And please, let's make that happen.
Thank you, Dan.
B, I just wanted to acknowledge two people that had asked questions in the chat. I'm not sure if they got their answers. One was from Emily asking, are there any wildlife concerns with synthetic versus natural turf?
Okay. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, because that did slip by me. And I think that there are wildlife considerations in that synthetic turf is plastic, and plastic degrades over time. And so the particles migrate into local water bodies, down into the water table. It's not a great material as far as being eco-friendly and animal-friendly, wildlife-friendly. So that is the straight dope on that. It's something where if we decide to go with synthetic turf, it's going to be because we are openly prioritizing, you know, the maximizing the use, and we would try and go with something that mitigates those negative effects as much as possible. There's some synthetic turfs that have infill material. There's like a crumb rubber that, you know, when it rains, the crumb rubber goes everywhere. We would probably not be allowed to use that kind of thing here in our waterfront location. Conservation Commission would probably have something to say about that. But so, you know, there are ways that we could try and balance it, but ultimately at the end of the day, synthetic turf is plastic, and plastic is not great for the natural world. So thank you for asking that. There are a couple of other questions that I'm looking at. Tim McKenna says, can you share the full soccer field sizes for plans A versus C? There's a couple of parking questions.
Gracie, can you go back to concept A real quick, and then we'll flip to concept C just for conversation. So concept A and B, we're showing a 300 by 180 footprint of a high school soccer field. Concept C would be what we consider full size, which is really a MLS professional size soccer field at 225 by 360.
We're slowly winding down as far as our participant numbers are going. So I'm not trying to end this conversation, but I think if we go to the last page of this presentation, I just want to make sure people see this part where we have a survey, a user survey. This is the QR code. You can scan it on your screen. The survey is also available on our website. If you go to the boston.gov/Ryan-Charlestown. So essentially, if you see this presentation and you're not comfortable speaking up right now, or you think of something later, please take our survey and let us know. There's also getting in touch with me as an option, and I'm gonna just remind everybody, I'm gonna send my, oh, there we go, it's at the bottom of the page. Great, I didn't see that. So there's my phone number and there is my email address. So just in case you think of something later, those are other ways of getting in touch. So as people sort of decide they have other things that they want to get to, just want to make sure that we part with that information so that people can continue to give us your feedback. It is actually 7:29. I just checked the time. So this is kind of amazing. Is there anyone else that has any other questions or comments? We didn't really get a chance to talk tonight about the sort of preferences that people have as far as like playgrounds, different types of equipment, the feeling for that sort of thing. I think Caitlin noted that the natural sort of playgrounds are kind of cool. So that's good that we heard that. This is also a conversation that we'll probably end up having at the third meeting. You know, you guys have opportunity to share your thoughts with that too. So if no one else is raising their hands.
You can also put all of those thoughts into the survey because it asks questions about all of those things. So that's another place where you can put that and then we'll have it in writing so we won't forget.
Thanks,
But we don't forget. We don't forget anything else, right? Yeah.
Just in case.
Chrissy.
We're all human, but yes.
Well,
Thank you all for coming tonight. I greatly appreciate your coming and participating. And thank you so much to the design team for pulling together these wonderful designs. And you've given us a lot to think about. And come check back in with us towards February. Start looking for our meeting date when we come to you and say, this is what's hopefully going in. What do you think? Is it okay? So thanks, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful night.
Good night, all. Thank you. B, did you want to hang on for a few minutes?
Okay, thank you very much.